A month ago, I set out to build a gaming PC with a console budget of $400. I asked if you guys would be interested in seeing a one-to-one comparison video between the PC and a PS4 Pro. You guys responded to that comment with over 1,000 likes. So of course I went out and bought myself a Pro. Now the point of this video is to find out if it would be possible to build a gaming PC with an equal cost as a PS4 Pro to either match or outperform the Pro in terms of graphics power. Now our original build consisted of a GeForce GTX 1050 paired with an i3-6100 processor, a 1TB hard drive, and 8GB of RAM, for the total cost of $393. This original configuration was built with style in mind. Now this came at a cost of limiting our graphics card budget. I later saw your guys' comments saying how I should have went for a GTX 1050 Ti or a Radeon RX 470 instead of the base 1050, and that the case's look shouldn't matter when doing a budget build. I agree. So for this video, we will be comparing two configurations against the Pro. One with an RX 470 and the other with a 1050. The addition of an RX 470 brings our second configuration's price up to $443 from our original cost of $393. This of course would blow our budget, but say looks were no longer a priority and we went for a more budget orientated $20 case instead of a fancy $40 one, and sacrificed our storage space from 1TB to 500GB, which would then cut our hard drive cost from $50 to $30. This would then leave us with a new total of $403, fairly within budget. But wait, this is still not fair. I mean, the PS4 Pro comes with a controller and built-in Wi-Fi, right? We can't just assume everyone else plays with a wired Ethernet connection or has a spare keyboard and mouse laying around like I do. So let's factor that into the equation. A wireless Logitech mouse and keyboard goes for $21 and will get the job done. An internal Wi-Fi card can be had for $9. Fair now? Nope. The Windows 10 OS. Well, first off, it's free. Yes, it's free. You simply go to Microsoft's website and download the media creation tool. This will then copy a bootable image of Windows 10 onto your USB flash drive, which you can then use to do a clean install of Windows on any PC. The only drawbacks of this is that you will then be left with a small watermark on the bottom right corner of your desktop telling you to activate Windows. Now in order to get rid of this watermark, you will have to activate Windows in your PC settings with a key. A Windows 10 key can be had anywhere from the retail price of $120 to as low as $7. Yes, you heard that correctly, only $7, as shown here on eBay. Another popular place to buy a Windows key from would be kingwin.net. Prices tend to fluctuate, but currently a key can be purchased for around 25 bucks. That then leaves us with a final cost of $430 for configuration 1 and $440 for configuration 2. Now before you start typing in the comment section about how the PS4 Pro is still cheaper, don't forget about the cost of PSN Plus. In order to play online on the PS4, you have to either pay $10 month to month or $60 upfront for the full year. Now our PS4 Pro's price just went up to $460, fairly within reach of our two PC configurations prices. Alright, so I think that settles it. And before we jump into our comparisons, I just wanted to let you guys know that a major source of information for this video was from the great team back at Digital Foundry. So anytime I'm talking about the PS4 Pro's performance during the comparisons, I'm referring to Digital Foundry as my source. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up in order to avoid saying Digital Foundry like over 100 times in this video. Also, all PC game comparisons will be running with VSync turned on, as the PS4 Pro titles all have it turned on. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into our comparisons. Kicking it off with Skyrim, one of the handful of titles that actually runs at a native 4K resolution on the PS4 Pro. Although its FPS is capped at 30, its 4K resolution still provides a much sharper image compared to the base PS4 version. As you can see, our GTX 1050 struggles to match the PS4 Pro's 30 FPS performance while playing at a 4K resolution at medium settings. Now if we were to turn down our resolution to 1080p, the 1050 would then have no problem playing Skyrim at not 30 but a full 60 FPS at high settings. When looking at the RX 470, at high settings with a 4K resolution, it does a better job of holding its 30 FPS target compared to the PS4 Pro. As shown here in Digital Foundry's frame rate analysis of Skyrim on the Pro, areas where the PS4's FPS dips down, the RX 470's stays locked at 30. It does not, however, maintain its 30 FPS at all times, as shown here. Unfortunately, Digital Foundry did not include this part in its frame rate analysis video, so I have no way of telling exactly how hard this part of the game affected the PS4 Pro's FPS. "2K17, another 4K title on the PS4 Pro running at an impressive 60 FPS. The GTX 1050 was able to achieve 60 FPS at 4K with medium to low settings with all the effects turned off. The RX 470 on the other hand was able to achieve this but with near maxed out settings, with the exception of bloom being off, anti-aliasing at 2 and our shader set to high instead of ultra. Besides that, all the settings were maxed out, giving us a picture on par with the PS4 Pro. Back over to the GTX 1050, at 1080p we were able to run the game at high settings with a locked 60 FPS. Battlefield 1 on the Pro was a bit odd to me. I mean, according to Digital Foundry, the game runs at a number of resolutions depending on the scene, anywhere from 1440p to 1656p across the first 2 levels of the campaign. Weird, right? I've never heard of a game ever doing that before, and at those high resolutions, it wasn't even worth trying with the GTX 1050, as it resulted in a very low unplayable FPS. And once again, at 1080p, the GTX 1050 had no problem providing a smooth 60 FPS experience in both the campaign and multiplayer. So when testing the RX 470, I ran the game at a 150% resolution scale of 1920 by 1080, which is equal to 1620p or native 3K resolution. Settings were fairly high with textures and filtering set to ultra. I tested Battlefield 1 using DirectX 11. I am aware of the performance boost using DirectX 12 with AMD cards, but for some reason I was having some major bugs when using the resolution scale option. The menu was running at like a negative 99% speed, where I had to click the multiplayer tab like 50 times before it finally registered. And not only that, I was actually getting worse FPS performance with DirectX 12 compared to when I was using DirectX 11. So yeah, there was that. Anyways, the 470 did a good job of maintaining 60 FPS most of the time during campaign. Although it was rare, it did however dip down into the low 50s, but for the majority of the time it was locked at a 60 FPS. In multiplayer, with the same settings as in the campaign, the 470 maintained a 60 FPS for the most part, with the worst case scenario being FPS dips into the high 40s, but at a 3K resolution, the RX 470's performance was still very impressive. The PS4 Pro also suffers from the same fate. As seen here in one of Digital Foundry's videos, frame rates drop down into the low 40s during intense scenes. Rise of the Tomb Raider was awesome. Well, I personally really enjoyed the campaign, but the cool thing about Rise of the Tomb Raider on the PS4 Pro was its PC-like customizability. The game actually gives you the option to choose from 3 different graphic presets. Although it doesn't give you full control of being able to tweak each setting manually like you would be able to do on the PC, it was still pretty cool to see a feature like this implemented in a console game. It'd be cool to see other developers take inspiration from this and implement it into their future titles on consoles. Like, not everyone really cares to play at a higher resolution. I would have preferred to play Battlefield 1 in 1080p to maintain a locked 60 FPS and not have to deal with FPS drops into the 40s, especially during online play when you're trying to be competitive. Luckily on the PC that's not a problem, as you can play the game at whatever graphic settings / resolution you please. But backtracking to Rise, there's 3 modes to choose from: a high frame rate mode, an enriched mode, and a 4K mode. I didn't care much for the 4K mode as it was just 4K checkerboard rendering and not a native 4K resolution, but I found the other 2 modes rather interesting. The first one being the high frame rate mode, which aims for a 60 FPS with the same graphic settings as the base PS4. This mode however struggles to hit its 60 FPS target, with frames dipping into the 40s when in open environments throughout the game. This mode runs at a native 1080p. The enriched mode also runs at a native 1080p but with higher detail graphic settings, and it's capped at 30 FPS. Now, for the high frame rate mode, we compare the RX 470 running the high graphic settings preset and the GTX 1050 running the medium preset. For the enrich mode, we compared the RX 470 running at maxed out settings, with the exception of textures at high instead of very high settings, as I required more than 4GB of video memory to run. In the enrich mode, the PS4 Pro's FPS is limited to 30. I decided not to do this with the RX 470 comparison as it never dipped below 30, and was even hitting 60 FPS when in areas that were indoors. For the GTX 1050, we were running the high preset with a FPS cap of 30 like on the PS4 Pro.
Damn it. Come on.
ARK is the game that will make your $400 PC look like a $200 PC. Let's just say it's not the most optimized game in the world, but people still love it even with all its flaws. With the GTX 1050, I tried my best to optimize ARK's graphics settings to get as close as possible to the PS4 Pro's detail and performance, but I missed it by a long shot. We did have the option to turn down some settings to achieve a higher FPS, but that's not the point. We wanted to see how close we could get it to match the PS4 Pro's detail settings. ARK's PS4 Pro detail setting renders the game at a native 1080p resolution with a target of 30 FPS. I ran ARK on the RX 470 with a mix of high settings with a 30 FPS cap. Unfortunately, due to the nature of ARK's poor state of optimization, both the PC and the PS4 Pro versions of the game suffered from major frame drops. So to wrap things up, I was really impressed with the PS4 Pro's performance for the price tag and for its small form factor. As for the question of, will consoles still be a thing in the next 10 years? Who really knows? But I can tell you this, the PC platform is the way of the future. Being not limited by specs or to just gaming, but being able to edit video, produce music, develop video games, code websites, run console emulators, and play God of War using an Xbox One controller. In other words, a PC can be a console, but a console can never be a PC. Thanks for watching and good night.